Sometimes in Commander, people just decide to hang it up. Today, we're going to talk about those reasons. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And this is The Thought Vessel. Welcome to the show.
That intro was really espressy-depressy.
It's on brand.
It is. But, like...
The world is a dark place.
It does, in fact, remind me of the last thing that I had to give up, and that was smoking.
Oh, how was that?
It was when I was still working in security. I had just made it to the mark in which I would be eligible for health insurance.
I know where this is going.
I was then told that it would be $50 extra on my health insurance if I smoked. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with that. And just quit cold turkey.
I mean, and you're also, cigarettes are expensive in and of itself, so you're making a ton of money on the back end of that too.
I'm playing Magic. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it went from tobacco to cardboard crack, but like...
You traded one
I'm
vice.
trying to girl math us into a public service announcement. Help me, Joe.
Yeah, no, like for the most part, it was actually
Girl math.
It was in fact girl math. It was in fact better for my health. The first weeks of it were rough because I was quitting cold turkey and I was already in a more demanding part of my security detail where it was dealing with people nonstop, going through a line of cars that were coming to pick people up. And man, was it just frustrating for like the first 2 hours, sometimes even 3. And you're just going nonstop, probably not even getting a break until that last third. And then for the rest of the night, it's usually chill. Made it a lot easier to quit after that. But it's that initial thing, plus some of the withdrawals that you get. I personally smoked half a pack a day with Marlboro Reds 100s, cowboy killers. That is how they usually call them. And I haven't smoked since, I want to say it's 2016.
Well, good for you. That's
Very
awesome.
proud of you.
I have been smoke-free for almost a decade after smoking for like 6 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I've said a little bit about my last time I quit. What about you guys?
Levi?
Well, for me, as a former college athlete, I always like having like a sport or a hobby that I'm really into, something to kind of give me a reason to exercise because I like having that motivation. So I always like exploring with different options. Like I've done pickleball and tennis and golf and stuff like that. Or one thing that I did pick up because it's kind of bigger down here in North Carolina is frisbee golf. As a college thrower, like I'm used to like throwing stuff very, very far, and I like watching things get way off in the distance. But when it came to disc golf or frisbee golf is I am very inflexible, like physically. Every time I throw, like my shoulder would get really, really sore. I'm like, oh, this is, maybe my muscles and ligaments are just not used to this kind of stuff because you kind of put your body in kind of weird positions when you're throwing.
You, in fact, did not eat your Yeeties.
Yeah, did not eat the Yeeties. But one day when I was working on, just doing power drives, just kind of over and over, just try to get the drive down. I felt like kind of a pop in my shoulder. And I kind of stubbornly powered through it. Kind of your whole athlete, like you're not injured until you're injured kind of thing. Like there's between hurt and injured. But, ended up going to the doctor later and I tore a labrum and I'm still not 100% off of that. Sometimes like you just have to find hobbies that you can play like for the rest of your life kind of a thing, just things to enjoy and reasons to get out and stay active. But I knew like if I kept going with disc golf, I was just going to have like a lot worse shoulders and back and other things than I would otherwise. So I just decided just to hard quit there. I refuse to touch disc golf or anything, not give myself the temptation. So we are full stop on disc golf for the chagrin of Jacoby here.
I don't really care. I like axe throwing. Way more anyways.
But like it also makes sense because at least to my knowledge, athletes are like some of the most injured people in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of like accidents, most times you're going to have the most injured people be athletes.
Well, and when you really think about it, it's like you're putting...
Yes, I understand Mr. Outlier over there.
No, I was just going to say, imagine that. Physically exerting yourself has the risk of harming yourself.
And
who would have guessed?
And it also goes to the point in a, granted, much smaller scale, but almost kind of with Marines where it's, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this not to disappoint the guy next to me. Kind of a thing, like more of a we over me kind of attitude. So you push your body probably farther sometimes than you should to kind of keep up with everyone else as a team. And sometimes that gets you hurt.
Yeah, but even then, for the most part, if you do get hurt through like a lot of those exercises, it brings the team down and you also then be a little bit more cognizant, at least in a military fashion. If you are not up to peak physical health and you're like doing things the wrong way, they're going to correct you immediately.
Yeah. There's a conflict of ideologies when it comes to group activities. Sports is power through it. Military or any organized group is going to be like, cease. You stop it right now. I don't care how much you want to do it. We're going to get you right because I need you at 100. And if you are anything less, it is not sufficient. And we do not accept insufficiencies here. If the moment you would have popped your shoulder, if I had been president, I'd be like, nope, I don't care if you're going to try to power through it. We're leaving and having you checked right now. We're not going to continue because if we do, that increases your risk of injury. You don't look at the bent bolt and go, it's still in there. You take it out and you either correct it or replace it.
Yeah. What are you, Boeing?
Jeez. Stop trying to get us canceled.
No, that is topical. Don't you dare.
So on the subject note of having to quit, I'm going to put diving out there. I used to be a commercial diver, and I love diving, don't get me mistaken. However, I got a very serious hand injury doing commercial work, not specifically in the water, but I was doing my due diligence at work. It was really early. I fell and broke my wrist to the point of having to have several surgeries, and then I ended up having it fused. But the experience I received trying to be a generally good Samaritan, I wasn't trying to hose this company. I wasn't like, I got injured on your floor and you owe me thousands and thousands of dollars. I did like I got hurt and here's my due diligence. I didn't get the proper care I should have gotten at work, where I didn't get to see an emergency room for over 2 weeks after my wrists swelled up to like 4 times its size.
2 weeks. Damn.
I slammed it. I said, I'm probably good. If something changes, I'll let you know. The next 8 hours, my wrist swelled up to 3 times its size. And I'm like, I should see a doctor. To which the supervisor's response is, hey, I really need you to get in the water and hold this pipe.
Oh, that's actual sue time.
Yeah, you're starting to get into lawyer talk at that point.
Well, at the point, I have a lot of pain tolerance. I thought it was hurt. I didn't think it was broken like it was.
I'm going to let you know, my guy, if you look down at your hand and you see a balloon, it's broke.
General fact, if any part of your body is more inflated than normal, it is likely you need to go medical assistance regardless of what anyone says to do.
I asked for this medical assistance. Keep in mind the nearest urgent care, not hospital, urgent care, 4.5 hours away. I was in the middle of, and I shit you not, fucking nowhere. It wasn't like we can take a quick trip. This was okay, so I know we just drove 4.5 hours in the middle of nowhere. I need urgent care. And they asked, and I was trying to be a team player. Case in point, why I have the opinion I have about the sports, in addition to the just military, just being in the military like I was like, I'm going to try and be a team player. Not a good idea. Do not do that. I don't care how much you want to be a team player. Your injury, if you're feeling any kind of pain, is way more relevant.
God, I had to do the same thing with my mom when she literally broke her wrist, but said, I don't want to go to the emergency room on a Saturday night. I want to watch Michael Phelps swim.
I respect it.
No.
I didn't.
But yeah, so with that injury in mind, same kind of ideology of, with my wrist being fused, I can't do the commercial diving the same way. No company would take me. Just because you can't climb an up and down a ladder with a fused wrist with any relative ease. Fun fact, you have to bend your wrist to do a lot of things. But I had to quit diving almost in its entirety. Like, I don't do any diving, recreational or otherwise, even though I do love diving. But I don't have the capacity for it.
We had 3 different tones for our last thing we had to quit. We had a little bit inspirational with the quitting of smoking. We had general everyday, I probably should quit that from now on. And then we have complete life-altering kind of sadness.
Balloon hands.
To this day.
Okay, you bringing it back to funny doesn't help.
But on a serious note, having a fused wrist, people don't understand how detrimental it is. They're like, yeah, you still have functionality of the hand. It's like, I don't think you understand that I can't bend I can't do the vast majority of motions that you consider everyday normal. I can't lift certain things above a certain weight under the risk that I will have to go and have bolts taken out of my body. Because there's like 16 bolts and a plate in my hand, keeping my stuff together in an exact position. And if I put too much stress, I can feel that.
Yeah, because I can think of like just picking things up where you would need at least a little bit of mobility of your wrist.
Like I had to reinvent opening doors because most doors are designed for right-handed people. And I cannot open a door with my right hand because when you twist a doorknob, you have to angle your wrist. Otherwise, you have to bend your whole fucking body. Fun fact, I learned that after having to open all doors with my left hand because I looked like a wretch. Like I was on some kind of weird nonsense trying to open door handles.
Full on JoJo pose.
I thought he was going to talk about being Silento. Now watch me whip.
Now watch me nay nay.
Yeah, I can do the whip. That's it.
Let's go.
We have confirmation. Jacoby can whip.
That is the only motion I got, though. If you ask anything past the whip, that's all I got.
But can you nay nay?
Not really, because it involves like your hand would normally go back. I can't really do that.
We're going to add that to the medical test. Can you still whip?
Can you do the royal wave?
I mean, that's the only wave I got. There is no other wave.
Fair enough.
All right. Moving on from decade-old references to pop culture. We're talking about quitting Commander. So this is through the internet and people giving me some information through X or Twitter. We have a list here of reasons why people have either given up Commander, and then a second part of what would be the final straw in order for me to quit playing Commander. We're going to go through these and we're going to answer 3 questions. One, now for background here, any reason you want to quit Commander is valid for you as an individual. I think in a bigger picture, higher level, is it a valid reason to quit? We can look at it from like a higher side of things.
I disagree, mainly because if you want to quit something, that is your prerogative. Anybody telling you that that is a not valid or stupid reason is not valid currently, unless you're saying, I should quit not taking drugs. I'm going to take all of the drugs. Listen to those people that say, don't do that.
Just as you have every right to scoop up your deck and walk away from a table, you have every right to scoop that deck into essentially the garbage can and say, no more, I'm done.
Because literally everybody that I talked to at work when I quit smoking said that me quitting because they were going to charge me $50 extra on health insurance was not a valid reason. I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. I quit smoking.
On top of that, like some people want to quit certain games and people want to get uppity about it. And I get the, I'm losing my friendship with this guy via this game is like semi an argument, but it's not a good argument. If you stop being friends with somebody because you don't share that one game anymore, sorry, not sorry.
So second question after is it valid is this something that was preventable or if it's something that's kind of built up over time? And then the last thing, is this something that Wizards of the Coast should be concerned about? Like, is this a overarching thing that we're seeing across Commander or Magic that is causing a lot of this exodus from the game?
Which can make sense. We've certainly had friends who, while they haven't stopped playing the game, necessarily stopped buying product.
Yeah, you can case by case basis, overlook certain things and understand that certain opinions. We have a friend who loves the game more than anything else, but will never purchase another product ever again. They hate everything Wizards is and was, but love the game that they produced so much that they're willing to love and support the ideas and concepts, but not the actual company.
That's always a weird spot for people from the card game itself and the business that runs it, because the company has to make decisions to keep itself afloat and keep everyone paid and keep shareholders happy and balance that with making a healthy game for players to be able to play. But we'll kind of jump into it first. The number one that we see across the board of why people quit playing Magic, it's just an overarching theme of toxic playgroup.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where, quote unquote, common courtesy and decency across mediums that are not just important life things has kind of gone a little bit lower down. It's not like skyrocketed down. I'm not saying people aren't commonly decent, but people are very self-interested. And it's really hard to bring self-interest into a group setting of a game and then not have some conflicts.
Well, yeah, and as at least a society, society is ever changing, evolving on what is the right thing, what's the wrong thing. As far as like minor things, those can be changed very easily. Big things like, hey, murder, not a generally accepted thing. For the most part, a lot of the toxicity can just be a nice little microcosm. And yeah, as far as toxicity, definitely a valid reason to leave.
100%.
I think there's some validity to it. I think we are a little loose with stuff that we're calling toxic as far as play groups is concerned. Somebody wiping the board isn't necessarily a toxic thing to do. Sometimes board states get scary. You have to do something to stop somebody from just winning on the next turn with the Creator Hub. But when it is a valid, oh, this person is intentionally teching against me no matter what, or this person's constantly playing hard stacks, then we can start talking about, okay, this is more toxic-esque behavior.
We also have a lot more sensitivity as we continue on in Magic and other things than we used to. For instance, as we evolve as a social format, people find certain things either not or very socially acceptable. And people bring a lot of things outside the game. Like instead of board wipe, someone doesn't like being called certain names. Like in a lot of recent culture in the last like decade or so, I'm going to use this word just because it's so you understand. Retard as a word is far less socially acceptable than it was when maybe we were way younger. Like people will be like really up in arms over it, and acceptably so because
It's more of a slur.
right. It went from a haha funny word when probably we were way younger to a
Well, it
this
was more
is really offensive.
It was more of a medical diagnosis back in the day.
But they've developed different terms
Yeah.
for that medically, and which is why it's becoming more of a slur to use it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's been massive developments in like special education and things like that. The more we learn and have more case studies, then we're able to more diagnose. We have autism on the spectrum now, which was not a thing. And we are finding more and more ways to help out.
We can always argue that autism was always a thing. It's just we now have more developed terms for it.
I guess my point is that as we continue to progress as a society or just as people, where we decide what is and isn't sensitive, insensitive, that adds to our game specifically because we're so socially inclined as a format. Like Commander is all about getting together with people talking.
For me, when I'm hearing toxic and leaving, I'm thinking of a League of Legends chat board.
I was going to
That's
reference
next level.
that.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of toxicity I think of when somebody's like, I'm leaving because of a toxic play group. And it is because they are wanting to play the game, but are so vile and vehement about certain actions that they will go way above and beyond what is even like accepted in just social settings regardless. And part of that could just be like the result of being anonymous, because a lot of the times when you're playing League, you are very anonymous and not well known to who is on the other side of the screen. There's a very common psychological principle that if you are behind a mask, you are more willing to do stuff that is outside of your norm because you have that veil of anonymity.
Yeah.
Although, with exception, there are streamers who are just still extraordinarily toxic, even in that environment. Case in point, there's a streamer who's famous, known as Tyler One, who is the epitome at some points of like exactly what toxic behavior looks like, where he'll be doing a thing and on stream in front of God and everybody else will just be like, kill yourself. Like, extreme, unacceptable behavior.
And that's why some of that is, in fact, just they played it anonymously so long that they just brought those feelings to the forefront because now they're just in front of the camera, and that's
Or just sells products,
that.
sponsorships.
Yeah. And with that in mind, things that are not acceptable, like behavior like that. But we also have oversensitivity where there are expectations of people who walk up to a table and it's just they have demands that are not easily met.
All right. And then is this preventable? I mean, technically as if you can find a new play group, but not always to be the case. Because sometimes if you're in a small town and there's only like 6 Commander players around you, you kind of just get what you get.
The preventability aspect, even in a small town, is usually finding out like different discords. The Lobby Pristine's always good for getting games in and has a very welcoming environment. Tolarian Community College. I know that people are still using it. Play EDH is still active, even though it had a major controversy with a CDH Discord. But there are places you can go and find groups that are not the toxic groups.
And keep in mind, not every group is for you. Sometimes if you have a sensitivity to something, it is smarter to change your area rather than your perspective if you cannot be tolerant of something. Or understand that not everyone's going to be sensitive to the same stuff you are. For instance, not everyone is going to worry about certain things like I do, and vice versa.
And then as far as toxic play groups, I just think that's just such a common thing with humanity. This is not a normal thing for just our game. I don't think there's anything Wizards, like they can be concerned about it, but there's anything they can do about it.
It's in that same strain of just the toxicity in like Star Wars, the toxicity in Steven Universes, because oh boy, those places have had some toxic people.
Every single medium out there has its over-the-top, extremely toxic sector. That's just a factor of having a medium.
And that's just because toxic humans exist.
Next one on our list, this is boiling down to power level discrepancies. So this is going to be where I want to do just casual and everyone around us we're in that arms race where everyone is trying to start buying or proxying mana crypts and they're just getting at a higher level, or it's I want to start optimizing my decks and everyone wants to keep their stuff around pre-con level and they keep getting mad at me. Where if you're just not in that realm of the same competitiveness with everybody, then you start having these awkward conversations.
I have this particular struggle very, very often, actually. This is a leading factor to a lot of my discomfort in Magic because I like to build haha funny, and no one is willing to be at the haha funny power level. Wizards is a deck I possess that's relatively, we'd say a 5, somewhere in the mid to high range. It'd be 5 as the low end of the spectrum you could view it at, as like maybe getting somewhere between that and like a 7 in our way of ranking it.
I'd be curious to see what would happen if you threw it in a Commander Salt Score.
Right.
Or something.
But that being said, that's not a strong deck. That's not anywhere near CDH. It's not super high power. It's higher.
I would say it's not consistent. I think that might be a better way of saying it because it has the potential to do strong things, and I've seen it. The difficulty comes in where it's not consistently strong.
It's a flip of a
has
coin.
Consistency. The issue is the objective it's trying to accomplish is what makes it lower. If I try to do what the deck really wants to do with the way I built it, it would be far, far scarier.
I can see why that would be an issue for people. I am just too much of an extrovert to be like, yeah, I'm going to quit this game because I can't find people. No, I just find people.
I think it depends on your community, especially if you're not comfortable going online to play games.
Well, yeah. And again, me being an extrovert, that's just going to be like, well, I want to do this thing. I'm probably going to just go and find where I'm going to be able to do this thing and do that thing.
See, my problem is that I am the exact opposite of that, where I don't like to interact. I stress that you should. I don't like to interact with a crap ton of strangers and just randomly try my things.
Yes, this is in fact the eat your broccoli argument.
And then, is this preventable? I personally think it is, but obviously there are some unique situations out there in which it wouldn't be. And then I think Wizards of the Coast should be concerned about it. Like at the rate that they're printing out powerful cards, I think that we are seeing just a shift in the just average commander deck being stronger than it has been in the past.
Plus just the powerful cards that people are wanting to play with, and they'll play in more casual settings despite the card being way overpowered for what it should be, Nadu. And just
Slicer.
Yeah, just naturally strong cards that are people are not going to be immediately thinking, oh, that's not that strong. And then they play it and like, I have the personality that it's not strong despite everyone telling them that they're wrong, especially after they've taken a 20-minute turn.
We have a lot more of people falsifying their objective view of like CDH versus non-CDH. Like we run into a lot of people who's like, oh man, I can't believe you've done CDH. And it's like, not even close. And then other people who have the adverse problem, like, yeah, this is like kind of mid. And it's like some crazy, not Ruber Gold machine, but just like really disgustingly efficient thing. And they're like, this is really underpowered. just these two polar opposite opinions that pilot polar opposite decks. And it's like, why?
I think the main problem with those statements is the question compared to what? It's very underpowered. Compared to what? Compared to Blue Farm? Yes. Then that describes pretty much every deck in the format at this particular point in time. And the rates of tournament play speak for itself.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of the conversations that I've been having with people are not so much what number do you associate with this deck? It is what is this deck trying to do based off of certain things that you have in the deck. And then let's compare that to what we're trying to do and see if that's even within the same ballpark.
Or the efficiency problem where you're trying to do something that's incredibly powerful, but you purposely gimped it to this is the versions of it I use. And you see like the weak once per turn version of certain things versus like Rhystic Study where it's always about.
Next one on this list is that Commander is becoming pay to play. So this is more along the lines I think of you have a play group and then you have one player that may have just more expendable income or they just spend more on the game and they just kind of start outpacing everybody else. There is some validity, but also like talk to your group about proxying maybe.
Yeah. You even saw me do the little scrunch face on that. Like it's paid to play. It's like, it's really not. There's so many people that will let you borrow a deck if you want to play in a more higher power. You can proxy to play some of the higher power cards if you can't afford them, which is going to be cheaper in the long run.
If we had been in the period of yesteryear where before they started printing those basically proxies and the New Year's set or whatever it was, there was a point in time where proxying was kind of questionable, where like a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people like, acceptable unless it's XYZ. And now, as we've progressed and evolved as a game and as a community, people went from if it's over $20 and you proxy it, I hate you, to if it's over $400 and you haven't played with it a bunch, whatever, still you're good.
I mean, it comes down to why are you playing like Chains of Mephistopheles in a casual pod? It's more like that. Don't stop playing powerful cards. Just play them in the right groups.
Yeah, don't be that guy who walks up to let's have fun and cast spells, and then be like, cool, only if you pay 30 more mana, though.
Do I agree with that reasoning? No. Is it still valid for them? Yes.
And you don't necessarily know what their play group is like, or maybe they're just at a point where they are just kind of making ends meet, or they're spending the money elsewhere and everyone else is just kind of blowing them out the water. So I get that. Is this preventable? Not really. Unless you have conversations with your play group or you're open to proxying.
You're in a hobby where the thing is just expensive. The same thing would happen if you went into Warhammer. The same thing would happen if you went into don't shake your head.
I'm shaking my head at you, but I'm going to let you finish your thought.
But you're in a hobby, you're going to spend XYZ amount, and usually that's going to be the more expensive.
So the reason I don't agree with that particular version of the example you used, Warhammer doesn't release a whole bunch of models the speed that Magic releases stuff. Once you have the models, a lot of the times you still use them and the rules change for them. But if you've amassed your army, right, you've made your purchases. Magic continues to release at increasing speeds over and over. Every single, last year, we didn't even get near as many as we're going to get this year. And then next year, they're projecting more than we got this year.
Okay, then let me change it to gaming PCs.
Yes, to an extent, I agree. Yeah.
Because technology technology is ever increasing.
But should WotC be concerned about it? I think that they're more thinking this is a good thing on the bottom line, where buying extra singles and continuously spending more money, helping out the local game stores, helping them out, it's all profitable flows of income for them. So they're not as concerned with that. Maybe they should be, but I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
They should change their mentality on it, is probably the proper thing. Is not so much because they're concerned with it because it's making them money. They are just not putting the correct kind of concern onto it.
Yeah, when people voiced their issues on their live streams, WotC full stop went, but no.
It's also the main reason why Richard Garfield was never invited back to a Magic Con. He had the opinion that no Magic card should be over $20.
Well, there you go.
I
Now
still
we got
agree with that
serialized
opinion.
stuff going for $600.
Sometimes it's like 1,000.
Yeah, I was looking at possibly picking up a Socrates serialized card because I do like Socrates, and then it was going for like 600 plus. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Man, so crates.
Next one is for power creep and printing speed, where it's if you have like a deck and you don't like to buy cards a lot and have it upgrade by, you're bringing it to the local game store maybe like once every 2-3 months, and then everything around you is just getting generically stronger and stronger because these new like borderline staple pieces are consistently getting put out, and you feel like your deck is just kind of getting phased out of the format.
Happens to me all the time.
Even if it's not just like strong cards, it could just be like situationally strong cards that you would have never thought of. And somebody's just randomly playing it in their deck. Might have been like 25 cents from one of the newer sets. And you just never interacted with that card. So you have no idea what the fuck it does. And it could just blow you out the water in that exact point in time. And you would maybe not be correct in saying that the release speed was the issue.
Like for me, the release speed is a big issue because they keep releasing things where I'm like, you and I love interesting new things all the time, Joe. We
100.
love to see something super cool and brand new. And the speed they keep releasing stuff, it's, for example, we just finished Modern Horizons. I got the commander decks for that, which is a pretty penny. We're now getting Bloomburrow. Bloomburrow's got a lot of things I really like because I love rabbits. To the point of I wanted to make a rabbit deck when they released that D&D Selesnya commander that when you deal combat damage get double your tokens worth of bunnies. I was like, oh, rabbits.
Yeah.
And this whole set's got so many.
It looks like a pretty strong archetype to work off of. I know you personally own some bunnies, so it makes a lot of sense.
I'm very sad that there was not a legendary possum. I'm in fact greatly upset.
That
about this.
was really weird that there wasn't. I don't know if we're going to get a legendary possum because if it wasn't in Bloomburrow, I don't know where it's going to be.
We had a possum on Thunder Junction. It wasn't legendary, but it was a possum.
Yeah, but we got some new owl legendaries.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
Derevi got a reprint, which looked really nice. And then they're making all these alternate arts that are going to be expensive and makes me angry because I collect the artworks and I got to go buy them. But yeah, so the printing speed and power creep and just trying to keep a grasp on everything going on, I get it. It can be frustrating. And I think Wizards, this is something that is preventable. And I think they should be concerned about it, that they're forcing people out of the game by just not wanting to keep up with everything. And it's just too much.
Because if we had gone back into the not just old release, but if we had a few sets a year, I know that they have so much planned and they're trying to like steamroll to get to the stuff people do want to do. But adding all this other really amazing content in between is really hard because for someone like me, I want to save up for the Final Fantasy set. I need every card from that set, every single one, because that's my favorite one, right? And then you release some really cool Bloomburrow stuff. It's like, this is great, but I can't invest into each one of these the same level. And it's really, it feels detrimental.
And I know the counterpoint is like not everything's for you, but when you're in an eternal format that's a 100 card singleton where you can build things out of pretty much any card in existence, everything kind of is. And they know that Commander is their most popular format by a large margin. So I think that argument kind of falls flat on its face.
It's really hard to say, I'm just going to ignore this, because even if you personally can ignore it, somebody's going to play it against you. And at some point, you're going to need to know that card.
And there are some instances where, like with Modern Horizons, if you don't grab all of it, you're losing value because one of the 4 decks is worth buying all 4 decks.
Me and the Eldrazi.
Right.
And then the next one here we have is, this is not necessarily for a play group that's toxic. This is more random pickup games at the local game store are becoming too toxic. We're going in and playing against random people. Like on average, you're just getting really toxic or just bad experiences consistently.
I mean, it's in the same strain as the toxic play group. It's just now more generalized to strangers. You do not need to stay at a table with people that you do not enjoy playing the game with. We have avenues that people can take to play the game. You don't need all the fancy equipment. You just need Moxfield, internet connection, and a Discord, and you'll be able to get there.
I mean, it can be a little depressing, I guess, where like if you're only playing online, like they're just going to the local game store is just so toxic around you. I can see that putting a bad taste in your mouth. And a lot of people, if they're behind web camera and they're only showing their playmat, they might be a little bit more hostile.
But at the same token, they don't necessarily always know you or even just a lot of the stuff that's outside of you. And it's also just easy to be like, well, I don't like this game. Disconnect.
And on top of that, there's a lot of issues with people just harassing people who shouldn't need to be harassed or pressing a point you shouldn't have to press just to try and make some weird statement in your game. Like, I really hate this card. Yeah. Or just pressing parts that don't need to be, you know?
Because like there was a recent example that I had where somebody got overly aggressive because I was like, board game state action you can do after like they whiffed. And they got overly aggressive because I said something.
Or people might assume that they may not see your strategy and they think they might be like a personal attack on that person.
Yeah, like foreseen slight that isn't necessarily there over whatever it could be.
Hi, you play send triplets.
Right.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm going to blow up this one person's soul ring because I'm planning on full attacking, eliminating one person and just hopefully hoping you don't have enough mana for a Cyclonic Rift or something.
Or just, I've literally had buddies is like, I don't like your particular shoe polish. Please die. It's like, why? Why are you like this?
It's the overly aggressive nature, if that was your reasoning, that might be a little too
That's
toxic.
the problem I have, yeah. No aggression is acceptable aggression unless it's very, very needed, and that's rare.
Unless, you know, somebody full lies and sends Eldrazi at the nicest player at the table.
When you do it more than once, that's when you get problems. Don't do that.
Harassed.
Let's go ahead and get into our next one here. So this one, I think, is more along the lines of starting in 2018, 2019 Magic into through the pandemic where we kind of had that pop in prices because everyone had a lot of more expendable income because people weren't traveling as much or they couldn't go on vacations or anything during that time. And that's just the game's getting too expensive for some folks, especially if you're in a group that does not permit proxies, which are somewhat of a newer thing to people do as kind of a response, or you just don't feel comfortable proxying cards.
Actually, I think the groups that are not allowing proxies are more of the old guard, and it's actually more fading out as we keep getting more expensive.
We got a few old heads now that were very anti-proxy that have become extremely pro-proxy.
Because if you make the game expensive, it gets more people and get pushed out just generally. We might even be broaching the topic of it's not that they left the game left them.
It's almost like a little bit of ageist of me where if I see like a high school kid at an LGS, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to play in your pod because it's probably going to be like an updated pre-con. I might want to be going a little bit stronger just because like high school kids normally don't have like a lot of money to upgrade their decks.
Yeah, but then for every high schooler that you think of that, there's a Dana Fisher.
Yeah.
For every high schooler you think of like that, there's the what was he, 7-year-old that shows up to a con who's actually dope as heck.
Yeah, that was really cool. But I
Props
mean,
to you still. If you're out there, if you ever hear us or we see you at a convention again, I'm going to play another game with you.
But don't say what we say.
Don't-
Wait until
don't-
you're older.
Don't say our foul language.
in duel, Commander, whatever you do to me, I'll do to you. All right, below his lands, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. Your grandpa should bring you to more conventions because the both of you were amazing.
It was a good game. It was a lot of fun. He played excellent. But I think just if we're at a point where you have a lot of high schoolers that are trying to get into this game, and if they feel like they're just kind of hitting a price wall and they can't compete with the 40-year-olds around them with more expendable income, they may not want to play the game. And then we're losing like a generation of players that are kind of supposed to kind of come in and take over the guard.
Actually, in addition to that, we have a real life example kind of this in a friend we have named Brian. Brian is a very interesting individual when it comes to like his play style. He likes to play either combo or a lot of draw, but
Wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, wheeling and dealing. And he loves the game, but the price wall is something that's like the main reason he doesn't do a lot of things outside of that like 1 or 2 wheel or deal decks. He just can't do the price tag.
It's tough. Like if you don't have the income, especially like if you're a college student and your job is to study or something like that, where only thing you're getting is like a part-time job, like it's tough.
Or you're like my one friend that has become so incredibly disabled that he no longer can go and do work, at least physical work. And it wasn't even that physical. He was selling tickets at a theater and being a supervisor from the ticket booth. Once his car got completely wrecked and he tried to just do public transportation to the theater, and it made him fall out of his chair and immediately go to the hospital, and he no longer could do it. And he's been out of a job and not had any kind of income outside of the social security that is disabilities, that he just can't really build a lot of new decks. And in fact, got on to me to help him build more budget friendly decks.
It's tough. Kind of, I'll let you talk here. It's like it's tough when, like I've been, one of my resolutions this year was to put my decks online, even with the proxies. Like if I was to go out and just buy and print something out, you have these decks, when you get all the cards together, you're talking like $400 or $600, and you're just like, holy smokes. If someone just getting into this hobby now is trying to get all this together, that's rough.
I think realistically, the best solution to something like that is to really lean on your community. Because if your community cannot be accepting, cannot be helpful, cannot be part of the team, then there's nothing you can do. Like any other trading card game, if we come together and you can't play because you can't do stuff, and I personally, I would find it my duty to like help improve, whether it's giving you some generic cards, whether it's helping you learn better strategies, or it's, hey, here's a different solution. Let's proxy your deck because I'm going to play with you no matter what. Getting together as a group.
And we've even seen this with just the sprouting of budget formats. We have Pauper, we have Pauper EDH, we have Pendragon, which I went on to that format stream, and it was a blast to play, especially because the whole point is that you're playing with commons, which you can get for just cents, just literal single-digit penny cents.
Makes too much sense.
And I do see the argument against that, where people who, like myself, I'm not super into Pauper Magic as far as the EDH is concerned, like, oh, but that argument's great, but I don't want to play those formats. I get you. That's another reason I lean on my community for sure.
Well, even then, I've also gone into not just doing only commons. I've also started doing like budget decks, because there are always going to be budget alternatives that may not be the most powerful cards, but they are still powerful in their own rights if you're playing them in a budget format. And maybe you just put like the Vanishing Enchantment on people's land and flicker them with Brago.
Get mate.
Your opponent's scooping can still win, Con.
No, it isn't. Of all the things, not valid.
It
No,
wins. It's a
valid.
condition.
But a lot of what you have to look out for is you got to really, really be a part of your community. If your local shop is not like my local shop, be a part of them and like really talk it out, because it helps prevent things like perceived slight. The more you interact with various human beings, the more you kind of pick up on whatever social cues, or like, oh, this play is not acceptable in this group. Like they don't want to have stacks, but over here I can do that. Really diving into the meat of diversify yourself.
And while WotC may want to take a look and make sure that that's done, bring back MSRP. For the most part, it's the economy in general. Even if the cards themselves stayed maybe like the same price, everything else got more expensive and they had to put their money other places. It's not just a good thing that they go out and buy $100 worth of cardboard. They needed that $100 for food, for gas, for their kids, for whatever necessities they needed.
And unfortunately, like this particular argument is something that makes the arena seem more desirable for people who don't want to have to do that, because they can every once in a while be like, I can spare $10. They get a pack. That deck is basically forever immortalized. I don't have to track the cards, bring them anywhere, so on and so forth.
Though usually Magic Online is technically better for like your value, since you can dust those cards. Literally, there's a trade system on Magic Online versus Arena.
Next one on our list here is effectively, when it comes to the board states for Commander, it's just too much going on for the person. Like it just gets way too complicated, messy. These are the people that normally go from Commander and then go into like Pauper or Modern, just like a 1v1 format where it's just more their speed.
That's just a valid reason of it's overly complicated. Not everybody likes complication, especially Jacoby with the chaos decks.
No. I love complicated. I don't like meaningless spaghetti.
Well, I mean,
Because I love layers. Layers are amazing. I love this stack.
we had a friend, Everett, that really did not like complicated board states. I felt like it maybe kind of made him feel like dumb or something, where he would get very, very frustrated and just check out if things got like really muddled up, especially if there was any kind of like chaos permanent on the field.
If there's a hive mind on the field, I'm scooping.
That was not his game. That was not his speed. He wanted to just kind of have things on the board and attack. That's the way he liked to interact with the game.
It is sad. And we only have our own reasoning on what that might have been. We can only assume that he felt dumb. That may not just be the case. It may just be the case that he just didn't want to track everything.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not dumb, but just overwhelmed. Like,
overwhelmed
that's
is probably
a better word for you.
Although there are a number of cases where people, do not want to feel a certain way because it's like, this makes me feel stupid, or like any other kind of way. And that's a valid perspective.
Putting yourself in situations where you don't feel stupid, I feel like that's a very reasonable response to things.
Especially when it's a gotcha moment. And it's a gotcha moment that you just missed because the board state is so complicated.
Yeah.
Or you have like people who make you have to do all your due diligence. Like there are instances where it's acceptable to be like, you should have asked about it because this is common knowledge. And other ones where it's like, okay, you just played like 17 things before I could have a moment to ask what's going on. What are you doing? Please back it up. Stopping that one. Because some people like to go.
Yeah. Oh, I think that you have no responses. Incorrect.
Yeah. Or it's like, perfect example, people who have that crazy nutty turn one and they're just so into their stuff. They're like, okay, black, we're going to ritual into this and this and this. It's like, hold up, wait. Slow down. I have a soul tithe.
Or dark ritual. I'm going to do this. No, you're not. Mental misstep, the dark ritual.
Exactly. Like instances like that where it's like, ugh.
And then, is this preventable? Not really. I think we're beyond that at this point. There's just too much out there. You would have to hard ban so many things to simplify a commander. And quite frankly, a lot of people really like it when things get all weird and complicated. I think it's a double-edged sword. Like you start making things more simple, then people are like, oh, well, games are all the same and too simple and boring. I don't want to play this anymore. You'll get that pocket of people.
It's a weird place to be. I can certainly see the validity in too complicated. And that's why we're not just a Magic the Gathering is the only card game. There are many others. Flesh and Blood can be not that complicated because it's just what you see on board is what you're going to have for the rest of the game.
You are 100% valid to look me dead in my dead fish eyes and go, Magic is dumb. I'm going to go play Pokemon. And I have no reasonable say to be any other way except for go have fun.
The fact that Magic is definitely a build-up format can just lead to that. And that's why a lot of people are like, Magic's so complicated.
Especially like Commander, until we started building Commander-specific cards, we had a multiplayer Battle Royale free-for-all format that is being designed out of a bunch of cards that are designed for 1v1. And that's going to create complications. Rhystic Study became incredibly powerful when it was a nothing bulk bin collection type of card for cents before.
Especially because it was printed at Common.
Like it's technically Pauper legal. It's not good in Pauper, but it's Pauper legal.
It is not Pauper EDH legal.
Banned in Pauper EDH.
But it is legal in Pendragon, which was interesting. They don't have a ban list as of yet.
They should.
I mean, if they're going to do that and it's a new format, have people just play the cards and see what becomes a problem. And literally, in the game that I played on the stream, I had a Mystic Remora, turn 2. You know how many people beat me in that game? 3.
That's a fancy way of saying you died first.
I don't think Wizards should be too concerned about that because that's just a very strong opinionated one where I don't think there's anything you can really do about it at this point. It's just too far gone.
The only way that they are going to be dealing with it is just building new mechanics to deal with complicated board states, which means more board wipes.
Wizards can only respond by like, okay, I'll make these other things. And then we find reasons to have problems with that.
I mean, that's how it's going to go. Everyone complains about everything. Basically the Star Wars universe.
It is, in fact, a circle jerk of hate.
It is the I hate stacks argument from Joe.
Look, if I'm not making Levi drop his head with some of my statements, it's not a good podcast.
Next On
Cringe.
our list, Discourse is exhausting. I think there are some play groups that you're going to talk about every single attack, whether it's a 2-2 at the beginning of the game getting rolled the dice randomly or super complicated stack situations. Some people just do not like the amount of bickering or debates that go on in between games. Not everyone's into the politics of it.
Or just my mindset when you said that was literally to Twitter. And literally, it's like the 4 seasons of arguments. Should Sol Ring be banned? Should Drana the Magistrate be banned?
There's going to be discourse about everything, and you have to really decide if you're going to pick and choose your battles or just let it exist and not be a part of it.
One of the favorite pastime arguments. Hybrid mana symbols shouldn't mean that it's 2 colors.
That's a dumb argument.
I know it's dumb.
Now, this will be interesting because we're having WotC making more hybrid mana in standard sets just generically because it helps out limited, because you can have more cards that are accessible in different colors depending on how you're building. We're going to have more cards that are shut off to monocolor because we're starting to flex more into hybrid with our comments that are being printed. That'll be interesting down the road to keep an eye on.
With the hybrid one, the first thing that comes to my mind with like, if they just allowed that, then I get to put Evelyn into a mono black deck.
Technically, yeah.
Because the hybrid is all black and then the only solid one is Black Pip.
You could
so
do
weird.
it. Definitely do that if you wanted to.
No, it's bad.
Do it because it's funny.
In that context. Well, that is the end of the reasons why some people are already gone. We have a couple here that are the kind of the cliff, like what would cause you to quit playing Magic and Commander?
We didn't even talk if WotC should look out for the discourse.
No, I thought we did.
I think we did in some capacity, but
It wasn't a big conversation, but I'm pretty sure we
But we can circle back to it. I think that politics are a big part of Commander. I think just finding the right play group that is not going to be overly talking about every little thing, unless that's what you're into. That's more of a play group thing.
your tribe and your vibe, pick them, figure them out, be out there, be free, but diversify.
Go forth and sow all of your seeds.
So
Dead stare into
back to
Jacoby's fish eyes.
Gross.
back to the cliff here.
Quite cringe.
So we have a couple here that are what would cause you to quit playing Magic or Commander. First one is if printing sped up even more than it already is. So if we're getting to the point that we're having like monthly set releases.
We are already kind of near that.
We're approaching it for sure.
The downtime that we have throughout the year is like maybe 1 or 2 months where we don't have a set.
I think a big part of that too is spoiler season is so constant that it makes it feel like we're just constantly having new cards to pay attention to.
This is one of the key points I would hit on for like reasons to consider quitting is I like new things. I like to experience all the stuff. I want to see everyone thrive in everything. It's really hard to do that when it's new.
Yeah, I cannot imagine people who play like Vintage and Legacy trying to keep up with new decks entering their format literally every month.
You got to keep track of cards, because if it's something really broken and a deck can run 4 of it, like that's going to be a big problem for you.
And even in Commander with Singleton, it's like some cards just outright replace others. If you're not paying attention and you just don't notice the new version of basically better Doomblade, right? What do you do?
Or even then, some cards maybe not replace, but become new staples because people aren't thinking of them in certain ways until the one person brings it along, shows it to a table, and then it sets off a wildfire. And that's why a card will creep up to hundreds.
The Fierce Effect.
Well, there was a very small portion of time in which Smothering Tithe was seen as kind of like, oh, it's decent. And then it got played on game nights and a wheel happened. And then they had 21 mana available to them. They're like, oh, I see why that's really good now. And then the price tripled overnight.
The big issue is the Fierce Effect. And if you're like scratching your head, like, what are you talking about, Jacob? There's this series of cards, Fierce Guardianship and other cards, like they have Fierce in there, but the free spells that were at one point only printed in the deck for a long, long time. And you happen to have missed that product because of the speed of Magic, and you happen to have purchased into the product right before it.
Yeah.
Things like that, like I might not be able to buy stuff for this Bloomburrow stuff because I'm saving up, which is going to really suck because I love the rabbits. It's like, why?
Fortunately, Wizards, because I think a part of it is because we're getting more frequency of the pre-constructed decks being made, is we haven't had like a Fierce Guardianship or Dockside Extortionist Deflecting SWAT kind of level power card in one of these decks in quite some time. Like they've been very strong, but it's been like a very strong equipment card, a very strong Enchantress card, not a very strong, there's a logical reason for
Ubiquitous.
every deck to run this.
That being said, like the Eldrazi one from Modern Horizons probably was the closest that it's come in a long time. And even then, it wasn't so much ubiquitous. It was probably just because it was a 5-color Eldrazi commander.
Yeah, but I mean, that's more just Eldrazi stuff. Like a lot of the cards in those decks were really good for that deck. But if I'm building, if I've got my Derevi Birds list to coming along, like I don't need anything from that Eldrazi deck.
I will say, back in the day, wanted to get another Dockside, saw how expensive it was. Then I looked up the deck it came from and saw that it was just expensive. Bought the deck.
Yeah, a lot of people did that. There was a market on eBay of that deck minus Dockside for the people that were wanting to get it, and it was really hard to buy the deck. And the deck itself was not very good. It's just some people wanted, like, I want that flashback themed deck or whatever it was, but I don't want this ridiculously powerful thing in there. And like, it was a whole market.
And then another issue is I wouldn't personally have this struggle I'm having right now if the themes weren't what I like back to back.
Yeah.
They made the Goyf deck. I've been waiting for a Goyf deck forever. And I'm like, sweet, I can buy this bundle because I like the Eldrazi deck. Thank goodness for experience counters. We're making that deck. It's been hard as heck, but we're going to get there. I liked the concept of the energy stuff and anything. Each deck was cool, so I got them all. Now we're hitting Bloomburrow, a theme I didn't anticipate loving as much. And it's just been banger after banger after banger. And it's like, oh, there are way more of the stuff I love in here than I expected.
Yeah, and especially when they did some spoilers from Duskmourn at Amsterdam. And I thought, man, I don't think I'm going to be excited for Bloomburrow anymore. And then they did so much. They gave me the Bloodthirst commander I always wanted.
They gave me another Naya commander I want.
They
The
gave me
rabbit.
owls.
The token rabbit.
It's so beautiful, and I'm so mad about it.
They gave me owls, and they gave me a new kill spell that has an owl on it. And it's a playable one, not just like a random piece of garbage.
Honestly, I thought when Morrow was like, oh yeah, we have an old mechanic that's in fact priced at a price it's never been at. And then it was 1 and a black. I thought that was going to be like counterspell 2 black. Nope. Black and 1. Destroy target creature. That's it.
I think like if you have like a Rakdos deck or something like that where you're not getting like the universally good generous gift, like it's going to see a lot of play.
It's more of just like they shifted it down from having 2 black and 1 to just 1 black and 1. And I think that might be pushing it a little bit too hard. I think if they wanted to keep it at 2 mana, I think just 2 black would have been fine.
I don't think it's an uncommon, so it's not going to go into Pauper yet. Like what formats was it going to break though?
I just wanted consistency.
It's
It
going
was-
to be good. Like
Break a format? No.
it's going to get play, and I
It's-
think that's a good thing.
We're getting this issue that Joe has nailed a few times where objectively speaking, we're getting slightly better variants of the things we used to use that are just going to get better and better over time.
Well-
where eventually like 2030 we'll have the 1 black pip destroy target thing.
Which technically, if you did like a Spellslinger deck and you had your mana reducers for just instants and sorceries, if you had Murder, that's still 2 black. If you had Fell, that's 1 black. You have turned that from a really good card to a extremely good card in that scenario.
It's closer to being a possibility of I could choose, like if you have black, white, and whatever, you reduce it, right? You can then decide that over path in certain scenarios where Murder you could not.
I think that the more versatility options you have in Commander, where it's not just, well, I'm in white, it's swords, I think that's a good thing. It takes a little bit away from the homogenous nature of Commander, kind of getting to that point where you only have 99 cards in the deck. And if you can build at this power level and just give different options, I think it's a good thing.
It's not a entirely
Also,
bad
I think
thing.
it's still sorcery.
Let me take a look.
Dip, 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 and vamping.
It is sorcery.
Yeah,
So
there
yeah,
we go.
Sorcery speed, 1 and a black, destroy target creature.
Oh, sorcery pog.
If I'm putting together a mono black deck and I need spot removal, I'm still probably going to run it.
Imagine if it was a Crick and Spellslinger and you just made it, oh, I'm going to pay 2 life Murder.
And that might have been part of the reasoning. We don't know. We'll move on to the next one here. This one made me kind of sad. Of all the ones in this list, I think this one might be the closest to like I would quit because of this, and that is loss of entire collection
Oh, we're done.
in a matter of like theft or fire or flooding if you had it like in a basement or something. It would be so hard to rebuild.
Mainly because a lot of memories are attached to those cards. And if
Mhm.
you don't have those exact cards, it can be incredibly hard to have the want to get back into it, especially because just playing the game will remind you of what you have lost.
And it's not even just that. When you invest into a hobby and then that investment goes into smokes, it rips away the sunk cost fallacy that some people have, where they overinvest into something because they really like it. And then after that cost is gone, they realize like, oh, me, I should never do that ever again. And then they walk away for that something like that.
And then they just turn into a different sunk cost fallacy from something else.
And-
The age old, hey, I see you've gone away from this habit. Can I entice you into this brand new habit that's going to take all of your money?
For instance, if your Magic collection, Levi, suddenly burst into flames right now, you probably would stop playing Magic, but we would probably pick up a different hobby that would end up being invested in if that's what happened.
If that is what happened, I think I would, because I have some of my decks online, I feel like I would proxy like my favorite 3 just to have them for memory's sake if I want to pick it up again. And then I would, because I am a one vice at a time person as far as like hobbies are concerned, I would probably consider trying something else.
Well, I mean, even then, you've also sunk money not just into the cards, but also going to the artist and getting a lot of them signed too.
Yes, that is true. A lot of cards that I have, like I am a big fan of autographs, and if I were to go and sell them, they're worth like 2 to 3 times the price of the card because I have that extra on there.
Unless you go
So
to
it
a
really
card
helps.
shop, in which case, no, that's damaged. I'll buy it from you for damaged.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I would, like, I love Magic. I love it wholeheartedly. I would probably transition into never purchasing product. And then, like, when things that caught my eye would be exciting, every deck would be plastic proxied if I continued to play. But that would be a really rough play.
And then the last one here on the list is if we get to the point that Commander is no longer unique, where we start changing a lot of the rules as far as color identity, maybe there's a tweak in the singleton, or there's so many staples across the board that all the decks just feel the same you're going against. Where
I guess-
Commander doesn't feel like
I guess a
Commander
way to
anymore.
look at it is if everyone's Wooburg and nothing feels special, why bother? I get you.
But even then, the beauty of Commander is that so many people are different and bring something different to the table that I find it hard to get to that point.
It would be incredibly hard, but as far as the hypotheticals here that they're talking about, I think it'd be tough. It would feel kind of like standard or modern where like there's 5 or 6 decks that everyone plays, and if you're not playing those, you're going to get blown out. And that could be a tough pill to swallow because at that point you don't get the creative expression you once did.
I feel like the hurdles that it would need to jump over for that is that the creative process of building a deck is no longer there. And by that, you could just be like, I really like just the flavor of this commander and want to build around it, which necessarily means that you're not always going to be playing the best staples. You're going to be playing more synergistic cards, which means that you have a whole lot of different cards you want to go for. Hell, there was one time in which I wanted to build a commander specifically because there was this one golem that just had the ability to just change its toughness to somebody else's creature. And that's all it did.
I think when we equally polarizing problem that I would see correlating with this is when every deck becomes the way Nadu's deck functions, where we start losing time management because everyone has this weird, not Ruber gold machine, but just this, hey, we're going to take 15 minutes to do my thing. And then you get to take 15 minutes to do your thing. Because a lot of decks have been kind of building towards that as we progress in Magic. And it gets harder because there's way more time sunk into a normal game of Magic over either CDH or how it used to be, where it's like, yeah, I just have this prosh and you happen to have enough flyers.
I can get that. Just the overabundance of I'm taking game actions. It certainly can seem too much ubiquitous between decks. I can certainly see that. It can be more that you see that at like higher levels, but even then, I don't think it's going to get to that point for like every game. Wizards would have to really screw the pooch on how the games are going to function to get it to that point.
We're seeing a lot more game actions to the point of there aren't a whole lot of storm decks out there, but a lot of decks are taking the equivalent actions a storm deck could take. And that slogs down for some people a lot of how the game functions. Like an old storm deck takes like 8 actions in a turn, and then they kind of just teeter out and don't do a whole lot more after that. And we're seeing a lot of that either spread out through the entire rotation or just each person's turn is that many actions. We're not really of the days where it's like, yep, mono green deck, cast 2 creatures, swing pass. Those days are, for the most part, long gone.
Well, seems like we need to play more stacks. Watsy, print more stacks.
I've been telling him, keep the Mahas a-flowing.
God, Maha. That's kind of...
No. You're mispronouncing it. It is the Big Baja.
Maha the Big Baja.
Maha the Big Baha.
He is the Big Baja.
Storms are coming.
Of the Naha.
He is going to drain you out with all the delicious juices.
All right. That is all the time we have for this episode. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we go?
Who wanted to draft this episode?
Nah.
Who wanted
Next
that?
episode.
Now, this, we'd have way too much time talking on this episode already. We'll be drafting the next episode.
Well, yeah. But honestly, it was necessary. Like, this is a huge topic. It has a wide berth of things to talk about. Trying to cram everything into that while also trying to do a draft.
And also,
Thank you for
we're
saving me
trying to make sure we're specific without stepping on toes. We're trying to make sure we make ourselves presentable correctly.
But also, thank you for keeping my editing down.
Proud of you.
Absolutely. This is important. These are the reasons that, your play groups fall apart. These are the things that people get frustrated with. And that's why you see numbers at local game stores dwindle and stuff. It's kind of these reasons, some stuff to pay attention to. Maybe look at the way you're playing and maybe look at adjusting or kind of seeing what's going on around you.
And no one's perfect. No one can communicate their exact thought the first time.
Oh,
every
absolutely.
time. Case in point, while recording this, we were trying to convey thoughts and we had to look at each other and really break down how we wanted to convey this to even all of you. And sometimes it's hard. No one wants to ever give unforeseen strife. No one wants to be hated on or be hateful just to be usually.
Because it goes back to something that I've just learned with communication in general. If someone misconstrues your message, you need to understand that maybe you need to change how you're saying it.
Yeah, conveyance is everything, and not everyone can do it all the time. I struggle with it all the time.
That is all the time we have this episode. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And this has been The Thought Vessel. Y'all have a good night.
Take care.
Did you peace sign?
I always peace sign.
Oh my God.
You've never noticed?
No!
I was about to say, he does it every time. Although, to be fair, he does it like this, and it's right behind the computer screen every
Joe's
single
observant.
time.
I'm sorry that you're usually like that and
Yeah, you usually put it right behind the screen.
It's right behind the screen. I've never seen it. Your hands are gone.
Have a good week, everybody.
We love all of you.
Bye.